Well, hey, good day to you. This is Todd. I am a regular dude walking in the Word. As we look at Colossians, yesterday we talked about traditions without Jesus. And today I want to talk about, as we conclude chapter 2, I'm actually going to do one little focus on one verse tomorrow of chapter 2 also. But overall, we're concluding chapter 2 today and it's entitled Rules Without Jesus. Okay? Yesterday we talked about traditions, and it's okay to have traditions, okay? But when those things, you're doing those traditions because they're just traditions and they have nothing to do with Jesus, that's when you're in trouble, okay? And I mean, it's okay to have the tradition of, we eat Thanksgiving here. Go right ahead. Or you do other things, but don't call it a Christian tradition or honoring Jesus if it doesn't really honor Jesus, okay? So anyway, today we're talking about rules without Jesus. So this is taken from Colossians chapter 2, verses 20 through 23, a whole 3 verses here. It says this: since you died with Christ to the elemental spiritual forces of this world, why, as though you still belong to the world, do you submit to its rules? Okay? We died to the world. We were crucified with Christ. We died to the world. So why are we still, obeying these rules from the past? Verse 21: do not handle, do not taste, do not touch. These rules, which you have to do with things that are all destined to perish with use, are based on merely human commands and teachings. These are all based on mere human commands and teachings. Such regulations indeed have appearance of wisdom, with self-imposed worship and their false humility and their harsh treatment of the body, but they lack any value in restraining sensual indulgence. Okay? What we're talking about today is, and really in the church today, is people making up rules, and they're doing it to make themselves be more spiritual. Okay? And it says, verse 23, such regulations indeed have the appearance of wisdom. They're acting like they're all wise, like, you know what, we need to make this rule, and we need to obey this because I feel in our wisdom this would be the best thing to do. Okay, watch out when they say something like that, rather than, I think this is what Jesus is teaching us to do. Okay, and with their self-imposed worship and their false humility. Again, yesterday we talked about the false humility also in having these traditions, and today we're talking about it again. These false humility of doing these things and imposing these things, acting like you're all humble, and you're not humble. You're just imposing these rules, and the rules are not getting you anywhere. In the end, he says the rules aren't working. Okay. The reality is you need to have a relationship with Jesus, and everything you do needs to be in relation to Jesus. Don't be just making up rules to make yourself more spiritual, but have it tied to your relationship with Jesus. Okay? So I picked out two things today. Rules that have been made up all the way here in the past. This was a problem all the way in the Old Testament, was the problem of fasting. Okay, so people would act like, they would make up rules. Okay, and fasting is a great thing to do. Okay, and God has called us to fast, but He wants us to do that in a relationship. If you feel that God wants you to fast this certain day, then by all means do that. But when we start making up a rule that on this day, and there's other false religions that do this, on this day, everyone's going to fast because it's going to make you holy. No, that's wrong. Okay, so when you do that, so fasting is a great thing. But when we start to make a rule out of it that everybody needs to fast on this day and do it this certain way, and so forth, and it's not tied to Jesus, because Jesus. In fact, Jesus was teaching, and the religious leaders and John the Baptist's disciples came up, and they were fasting, and they said, hey, we're all fasting, and how's come your disciples are not fasting? And he said, because I'm right here with them. Why should they fast right now? I'm sitting right here with them, so there's no need to fast. Okay. So Go ahead and fast if you want to. That's great. But don't be making it rules that everyone needs to follow the day that you want to fast. All right? The other thing is this, celibacy. So, again, fasting was going on back then, and it was being a rule that was made, and it turned into false teaching then. And then celibacy is another thing that it was going on back then, and it's still going on today, you think, because I'm acting celibate, or I'm not engaging in sex at all, that makes me a holier person. Okay? Again, Jesus never taught that. If you are a celibate person, you're more holy. Paul actually, he did talk about it. He said, hey, if God has called you to be celibate, by all means, go ahead and do it. But if not, there's no law saying you need to be celibate. But some people have, in religious groups, have acted like, to be holier or closer to God, we need to be celibate. Okay? And so there's whole cults that have developed out of this, teaching that you have to be celibate and continue to live that way, and then you'll be closer to God, you'll be holier. Well, Jesus never taught that. So that's a false teaching that Jesus never taught. Okay? These groups, there's one group I can think of specifically down in Naples that it's now a state park, that the people taught, but they also taught some other weird things too. But they were teaching the whole celibacy thing. Well, that group doesn't exist anymore because they taught that and they didn't have no kids to carry on that teaching. Okay? There's another group in Kentucky that had the same, not the same exact teaching, but they were also teaching that same thing of celibacy. To be closer to God, you need to practice celibacy like that. Well, that's a tourist attraction now. It's not an ongoing cult, because they all died out and there's no children to carry on that false tradition, false rules. So anyway, those are just two that I picked out. You'll think of more, but the bottom line is, if you're obeying rules within the church, here, make sure they're tied to Jesus. If it's just a rule to be a rule, and for people to think that, you're much holier because you obey those rules, watch out. All right? Hey, thanks for watching. I'm just a regular dude walking in the Word, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we continue our journey through Colossians. Lord's blessing. I'll see you then.